What's up, everybody? Spraggy back here with PokerVIP.com. We are starting off a new series today, playing 50 no-limit regular tables over on Betsafe, which is part of the micro gaming network. We've got 3 tables for you today. Unfortunately, due to the nature of the software and fitting everything in on the screen, we'll have to have them slightly overlapping. But we'll jump straight into the action. We've just opened the Queen 10 here in the cutoff. I think we will consider a C-bet. With the Queen of Clubs backdoor as well. We've got a gut shot, which is obviously good. The Queen of Clubs becomes a really good barrel spot for us now. Our opponent shouldn't have Ace-King too often. Imagine Pocket Twos is raising the flop, so he's capped to an extent with his flat call pre-flop and his call on the flop. I think this is a really decent spot for a barrel. We don't know too much about him. I'm going to assume he's likely a regular play. He calls the turn pretty quick, so could have a hand like Ace-Jack with a club. I think that's going to fold a reasonable amount. I'm an unknown to him, so I think firing 3 here is probably fine. And he calls 3 streets with the ace and the 9, which, like I said, I'm very, very new to these games. I'm not entirely sure how they're going to play. I don't particularly mind a triple barrel there with the queen and the 10. I think it's reasonable against most. I think that's a fairly thin call down with the ace-9. But as I said, I am new to him. He might think I'm a recreational just here hoofing around. But I think it's good with our blocker. And given our opponent's range, top left-hand side, we're going to make a c-bet with a queen-jack. We've got 2 overs and a reasonable backdoor. What a great start to the video, eh? Get picked off. But like I said, I think the line, by and large, is going to be good. I've only just joined up to Betsafe today. They've got a decent amount of tables running currently at 50 now. They've got a mix of regular tables and anonymous tables if you prefer to play anonymously. I think when we're new to a site, or when I'm new to a site, I'd rather play with named players. Just so, for example, let's take a look at our tables here. We've got GRN on table 1 in the top left. We've got GRN here. So we're going to assume he's also on this table. So we're going to assume this guy at the very least is going to be a regular, so we're going to give him the red pin. I don't see too many familiar names, so I guess we're kind of in the dark a little bit here, but we'll talk about some general strategies and just see how these games are going to play on Betsafe, I guess. I believe this is, like I say, this is part of the micro gaming network. I believe it is the same skin as BetVictor. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, of course. But the software seems very similar to what I've used on BetVictor before. With the ace-5 off here, we see a 4x open from chill-in flush, which is a little bit unorthodox. Maybe this guy isn't a regular. Maybe we've misread him there a little bit, but I'm still okay with the bluff given what we knew at the time. Top left-hand side will defend the jack and the 8 in the big blind. I think seems reasonable. And most likely just given up here on the flop to a c-bet. Top left-hand side, we will raise. We do have this Raisman's Way playing on a couple of our tables as well, so potentially, again, potentially a regular. Ace-Queen of Hearts is certainly a hand we'll be interested in playing out of the small blind. Versus an under the gun open, I think it's close. We could definitely consider a 3-bet here. I think in terms of keeping his range just a little bit wider, I'm going to go with the flat call. A pretty reasonable board. We flop 2 overs and a gut shot. No backdoor hearts is a little bit less appealing to us, but I think floating 1 here is going to be the best play. On the turn, we could potentially make some bluff raises. We do have a double gut shot. It might be better for us to use a stronger hand here potentially. We don't want to raise too many hands for value on this turn. We wouldn't really flat queen 9 suited here, so it'd just be pocket 6s, occasional pocket 10s and jacks, some of which raise the flop. We don't have too many value raises. We don't need that many bluffs. I don't hate calling. We've occasionally got the best hand. We do have a double gutter, and occasionally the queen or the ace is good, so I'm actually contemplating calling another. I think this is somewhat reasonable. In this situation, I don't think we want to lead as a bluff. He's going to have some backdoor diamond combos. We shouldn't be using this hand as a bluff. And he just checked back with the set of 10s. So we were drawing pretty thin, but I think in general, calling the turn should be okay. Like I say, we're occasionally even ahead of some of his bluffs. Top right-hand side, we're just going to fold the king 5 suited. On the right, I think I like a 3-bet against this, what we assume is a regulars open. It's a little bit different on this side. I think this actually is going to make it 445. Yeah, so we're raising on top of whatever our bet amount is. Left-hand side with the ace-7, I think versus under the gun, I'm just going to fold. Jack-10 off, of course, will be a raise on the button. I'm just going to go for the min-opens, I think is fine. The other slightly irritating, you could probably turn it off, but clicking on the tables, it moves them around, so I don't know. I'm sure there's a way to disable that. I did turn off some animations and some sounds and stuff, but for the most part, the software's very nice, quite a clean interface, but a little bit of a frustrating one there. I don't know. This is close. Jack-10 off, Queen-10 off, I think is fine. Jack-10 off's getting towards hands that we should probably fold. So without having any information on our opponents, I think we're just going to start with a fold. We are playing pretty short-handed here, of course. It's basically myself and 2 other regulars, but we'll just stick it out. Let's see what we can get going. We'll open the ace-3 blind v blind. I keep getting these achievements as well because I'm new to the site. I am the pot hunter with ace-3. A suited ace over here is going to be an open, as is the ace-9 off on the button. Again, this is kind of right at the bottom of range of hands that I would want to call a 3-bet here on the button. It does look like Raisman's Way is being quite aggressive versus our button steals, but I still think I'm going to go with a fold at this point. And folding the Jack-8 of diamonds. We get 3-bet from Bobacks over here in the small blind. This is certainly a hand we could consider using as a 4-bet bluff, and it's kind of a close one because we don't actually know too much about this player, but I think I'm going to go for it just straight off the bat here. People do tend to 3-bet pretty wide out the small blind in the majority of 15L pools that I've experienced, so I don't mind starting off early with a 4-bet bluff with a suited wheel ace. Seems like a good place to sort of announce our arrival, if you will. We have the ace-queen down here on the bottom middle table. I think this is a reasonable board to check behind. We could certainly go either way with it. I think both betting and checking are going to be okay. GRN is a regular, so potentially a little bit more aggressive, slightly more chance of getting check raised with some backdoor bluffs that we don't really want to call off against with just the ace-queen high. So we'll take it a step closer to showdown with the very strong no pair hand, and obviously the queen on the turn seems pretty reasonable, pretty good. He leads into us. I'm just going to call. I don't expect him to have too many 10s that lead the turn. It's going to be a lot of Queen X, King Jack, Jack 9 sort of hands. Occasionally the Queen 10, the pocket 5s, pocket 6s, but the river is just going to be a trivial call, I think. And he leads the Queen Jack, which we beat. Don't think we can find a raiser. I think calling seems okay. We've gone with the 3-bet from the small blind ourselves with the pocket jacks against Wang Chao. We get cold called by Turin. Pretty drab board for us, going 3-way to the flop here with the jacks. Obviously, we've got the 2 overs. A gut shot, not particularly relevant, I don't think. I think into 2 players, the best plan is just going to be to check fold this board. Over on the top right-hand side, we should definitely have bet the turn. I was a little bit distracted here. I think this has gone check now in his bet river. I guess I'm just bluff catching. And the 10 is good. Definitely should have bet the turn here. That was a small mistake. Again, even less reason to get involved on this turn card now. Both players can certainly still have Queen X in their range that checks back flop. We're just hoping to get to showdown and win against, let's see here, what do we beat? Pocket 10s and like 7s that decides to set mine. Hopefully. But I certainly don't think we can call a bet in this situation. Kind of a weird sizing by this guy. It does make me somewhat suspicious, just because I think a queen bets turn. I think Jack 10 is going to bet. Flop or turn. So what's our opponent repping? Pocket 6s? specifically, which is kind of a narrow range of value hands. So it does make me somewhat suspicious just because it's a pot size bet. He did cold call pre-flop. I don't expect too many. It's kind of hard for him to have anything here, right? I blocked Jack 10 as well. So unless we lose to sixes, I am very tempted to try and pick this one off. I guess kings also makes sense. It's kind of an odd one. I'd expect a bet on flop the vast majority of the time, or at least turn. I don't know. I guess checking the turn against this guy's can be okay. He's going to have a decent amount of queen X's range. That was potentially a thin call. Again, against a regular, I think that's a bit of a hopeful call. But against a recreational player who can make some wild stabs at that river once everybody's checked multiple times, I don't hate it, given he's repping a very, very narrow value range, but certainly a thin one. Looks like we're engaged in some heads-up action in the top right-hand side, which we won't mind at all. This is probably the best... Oh, and off he goes. I was going to say, this is probably the best way to get action on the Betsafe client, or smaller sites like this, because a decent amount of the tables are going to fill up with regulars. So in order to get into games with recreational players, quite often you're going to have to start tables on your own, because recreational players don't want to wait around on waiting lists or anything like that. They want to jump straight into action. So if they see a table 6 out of 6 players, they're just going to ignore it for the most part. If they see a table with someone sitting on their own, or two or three players playing, and there's an empty seat, they're much more likely to jump on. So I think starting tables is definitely should be more likely to gain the attraction of recreational players than sitting in or waitlisting big games, or full games rather. We decided to try and check the flop here. I think betting the turn is going to be the best play. Checking the flop here is more a case of there being very few scare cards for us and not really wanting to go 3 streets with the king 10. Keeping some hands, stronger hands in our check call range. And the king 9 we are just going to fold. Chill-in flush continues to 4-exit, which, like I say, is a little bit unorthodox. From all positions as well. Some people 4x under the gun, which I think is a little bit too much. I would stick with the 3x for the most part, but certainly something to keep an eye on. Especially when I think he previously 4x'd from mid position, which is, like I say, definitely raising too large. I would imagine. We'll take a look at the lobby just to see, because we're making a video, obviously we want to keep the action flowy here. See if there are any other tables that we can potentially jump into, rather than, oh dear me, that's going to move all your tables off the screen, Spraggy. So there is another game available, which we'll jump into over here. Just like I say, just for the video, to try and keep our 3 tables running. Unfortunately, it's going to move all my tables across all of my monitors. Here we go. Sorry about that. We're back in the action. We see a raise under the gun from Turin. We're just going to fold the queen and the 7 of diamonds. Unless we go Molly way here, we potentially see a flop if GRN comes along. But I think folding here is probably best. Hand is obviously very easily dominated versus an under the gun opening range. We can't make any straights. I think if I had a hand like 8-9 suited, I'd probably take a flop, something a little bit more connected, but we're largely playing this hand for top pair value, and 7x is going to be dominated, and queen x obviously dominated for the most part. Ace-9 off under the gun seems like a pretty straightforward fold. Ace-king off, we will give this one a 3-bet. The button limps. I'm going to assume a recreational player. We are going to raise to €2.50. I think it's fine. We see a button limp. We really want to punish, especially being out of position, and make it a bit bigger. I think that's fine, as well as the regular player, or we assume regular, in the small blind comes along. I think making a bigger size is good. We assume this guy's a reg because he's on multiple tables here. Kiss my ass. I think king queen is a really good hand to use as a 3-bet bluff here. I don't really want to call it out the small blind, but if we consider this guy's under the gun opening range is going to be all pairs, obviously decent broadways and some suited connectors. King queen blocks queens, kings, ace king, obviously king queen itself, ace queen and ace king. So that's makes it much more likely that he has some of the weaker parts of his opening range under the gun, so I like using this hand as a 3-bet bluff. Without any backdoors, I think this is certainly very close. We could definitely give up with this combo. I think actually we're going to. I would c-bet here with obviously all of my pairs, and I think I would bet if I had at least one diamond in my hand. But we'll probably find that if we bet this, we will be making too many stabs at this board, especially in a spot where his under-the-gun range for defending a 3-bet is likely quite strong. So I think just giving up here is fine. And we would check call the turn with some ace-highs, of course. Middle table, we turn some equity with the queen-9 having checked the flop. I'm going to take a stab now. We've got an open-ender and a backdoor flush draw. And our opponent gives it up. I'm now the pot hunter with queen-9 suited. So certainly a lot of achievements on offer on Betsafe, if nothing else. Middle table, we'll be going for a raise with the 7-9 suited if it makes it round to us on the button. But we can potentially make a 3-bet actually against the cutoff open with this hand, but as played, we're just going to raise. This table seems to be breaking down as well. I don't know. It seems like a lot of the regs aren't keen on playing unless there's a recreational at the table, which is often the way, of course. But we'll have at it. Queen 10 off from the cutoff is definitely going to be a raise. We see an open from GRN. I'm just moving out of the way. We're trying to establish really, when we're new to a site, who are the regulars, and definitely think we've seen this guy on a bunch of tables, so let's get him with a little red pin in. GRN. We've seen on a lot of tables, we'll get him with a little red pin in. Kuznek as well, I believe, is on currently 2 of my tables, so I'm going to assume this guy's... This is more like a suspected regular tag at this point, and then confirming later down the road. Chillin' Flush definitely seems a little bit more recreational. I think he's just sat out here and posted the big blind and the small blind. So that's, of course, something to look out for as well. The fact that he didn't wait there for his big blind, to be back in the big blind. He just took the quick re-entry into the pool and chucked in the big blind and small blind, which I don't think any regular player is going to do. So, of course, being new to the site, Spraggy picks first hand, let's bluff the one guy who we thought was going to be a regular, but turns out is probably a bit more of a fun player. Nice, mate. But that's okay. Like I said at the time, I think in general against population, it's one of the hands we should be bluffing with. Queen Jack off on the right-hand side, you could definitely make an argument for a defend. I think Queen Jack suited, I'm definitely taking a flop. Queen Jack off, I'd be more inclined to 3-bet here, especially we get a flat call on the button. The only thing that makes me want to call, I think, more than a 3-bet is the fact that Lucky Forever is recreational. So that's going to do 2 things. Obviously, we're going to be able to play against his range, which is probably quite wide. And it's also going to keep Kuznek a lot more honest. He's going to... lot fewer opportunities, rather, for him to c-bet wide and double barrel, triple barrel with this player in the pot, because he's got to be wary that a recreational is probably going to call down fairly wide. Out of position, we do have a gut shot and a backdoor spade, but I think out of position with a regular still back behind us, folding against this guy is just going to be the best course of action. And on table 1 in the cutoff, we won't open the ace-4 off. So Kuznek strangely does decide to check call. I think his most likely hands are going to be 9x, pocket 10s, pocket jacks, pocket queens. Obviously we block the queen and the jack. So I think once he checks here against the reg, he kind of caps his range, in that I'd expect him just to be looking for multiple streets of value with his kings against this guy. So when he checks, he's most likely got some marginal showdown value. 8-6 off, we're just going to fold blind v blind, opening the pocket 8s down on table 1. And we see a 3-bet. I think defending most of our pairs in position is going to be a perfectly viable play. I think this is going to be pretty reasonable, actually. I mean, I'm less excited about it just because he's 3-bet are under the gun open. I think his range is going to be a little bit stronger, but we'll take a flop. And as flops go, without flopping a set, that's a reasonably good one. I think definitely going to be calling at least 1 bet here. Not a particularly exciting turn card, of course. Table 1 on the right, we have extremely multi-way here with the pocket 7s. I think checking back is going to be fine. We end up timing that anyway, but definitely check is going to be the correct course of action. Here with the 8s, it's a pretty straightforward fold without any spades. Even with spades, we're most likely folding there. Our hands that continue would be something like queens or kings that decided to flat pre, given that we opened under the gun and got 3-bet. Or an ace-king with a spade that floated flop. Unfortunately, no action with the pocket kings. We end up giving up with the 7s over here. I think I prefer a 3-bet on the button with the ace-jack off. Ace-jack suited, I wouldn't mind a call here, but I think ace-jack off is a reasonable decision to 3-bet pre. Not a particularly exciting start to life here on Betsafe, but we intend on making a 4-part series. I think we're down just over a buy-in so far. We made a speculative call-off with the jacks at the river, where we thought his value range was pretty narrow. And we made a bluff with the queen 10, where we thought we had decent blockers against a somewhat weak range. Here with the ace-jack, I think it's a decent candidate for a c-bet. We will c-bet slightly... on the larger side, in 3-bet pots on dry boards, we're likely c-betting about a third pot, but on a more connected flop, I think our range would want to bet closer to half. Without the ace of clubs here, I probably wouldn't c-bet, but we have a backdoor straight draw in both directions, and we have the 2 overs with the club here, so I think betting 1 is going to be fine. The 2 of spades is a really disappointing turn for us. None of our backdoor draws come in. It's not really changing the board texture too much. I think checking back here is going to be... the most reasonable play. Obviously, we've got to cut out some of our bluffs on the turn, and I think this is a good one to cut out. We continue bluffing here with something like Queen Jack of clubs if we have it, or say 7-9 of clubs, but I think this one is just going to be a check behind. Obviously, the river does improve our hand. I think we should definitely have called a bet if he leads. When we see a check from our opponent, I think betting is going to be the best play. He can certainly have a hand like Queen Jack of diamonds, maybe even King Jack of diamonds that decides to call flop after calling pre. He can obviously have some ace 10 suited, 10-9 suited potentially. Definitely just think a bet fold at the river is going to be the best decision. And he snap check shoves on me, which is very disappointing once again. I guess I just bet fold here and just trust him. Again, it's one of those horrible spots where this is probably one of the best hands in my range, so I don't know whether we should make the bet call. But time bank gets the better of us. We actually have insufficient funds on Betsafe. I didn't anticipate this session going quite so poorly. That's disappointing. All right, I guess we're going to continue here with the 32 euros. But yeah, that's, I mean, again, that's a spot where our opponent isn't really representing too many strong hands. I guess pocket 10s, pocket 8s are reasonable. I'm still quite happy with our both our bet for value and our fold at the river. We'll have to switch off auto top up for this table. Maybe we'll just cut down to 2 tables actually. I don't think there's going to be much value in playing there with the 30 euros. We get a very small 3-bet here. I think calling on the button is fine, even with a hand as weak as King 9 off, just because the sizing was particularly small. Let's see if I can tile these now. Nope, this is as big as the tables will go. That's a shame. We're going to call here. It's a pot-sized bet. It's not ideal, but we do flop top pair. The turn is definitely going to slow us down. I don't think we want to continue with our hand now. Our opponent bets, we're just going to let this one go. Much better hands in our range to call on this turn, of course. So I apologize both for the fact that we're down to 2 tables and the fact that the tables will not go any larger, but this should be fine for the concluding 5 minutes of the video. Looks like I'll have to redeposit. And we'll go again for part 2. Some very interesting spots here to kick off life at 15L. Obviously, we've been on the losing end of almost every pot we've played, but I definitely think the lines we've taken have been have been optimal. I can't imagine not value betting the ace jack when we get there, and I think folding is going to be fine. It's going to take quite a significant read to want to bet call that particular hand at the river, I would imagine. Like I say, with that said, it is one of the stronger hands we get to at the river. I think potentially I can have jack 10 suited there, but other than that, it really is one of our stronger hands. Maybe the 7-9 if we don't continue on the turn. Maybe the queen 9 if we don't continue on the turn. I think 7-9 we're more likely to continue with a bluff on the turn, with slightly more equity. Queen 9, slightly less equity and slightly more showdown value. We're more likely to check behind. So we do have some straights. We do have some 2 pairs. But it is certainly close to the top of my range for betting the river. So if we feel like our opponent is exploiting us, it would have to be a hand that we bet call. But without any further reason and with knowledge of the 15L population, I struggle to see too many bluffs in our opponent's range there. So I'm quite happy with the bet fold, I think. I think in general it's going to be a good choice. King 6 suited, we will defend in the big blind versus the button open. Obviously we flop pretty favorably. We have a lot of equity here. So we can go one of 2 ways. It's really hard to make a mistake when we flop so well. I think calling in position is perfectly reasonable. He's also going to barrel some of our outs when we do this blind v blind. He's gonna barrel some of our outs like a king. He's going to occasionally barrel a spade as well. So obviously we pick up top pair. It's blind v blind. It's very likely to be the best hand still. And we have a ridiculous number of outs if it isn't. So obviously coming in with the call. And I think blind v blind situation here we'd be obliged to call 3 streets. Kind of a tricky one at the river, because I don't think our opponent bets an 8 on the turn too often. I don't think he bets pocket 9s, pocket 10s on the river too often. So I don't think we can get value from those hands. With that said, a load of draws did miss. So if he does bet 9s, 10s, or 8x on the turn, he's almost certainly check calling them. I think we're probably just going to check behind. Actually, I feel like we're missing too much value, but it does suck when we get check jammed on here. It's certainly a close spot if we don't know that he bets like 8x on the turn for protection. But I think when so many draws miss on the flop, we're kind of obliged to bluff. And I'm just going to go a little bit bigger, which is what I would do with my missed draws, I guess. So we'll do that. And he calls with the king 6 of diamonds, and we end up with the chop pot. This is certainly somewhat thin. As I say, I think when so many of the draws miss on the flop, we should probably be value betting all of our kings there. Because certain opponents are going to bet the 8x on the turn, 9s on the turn, 10s on the turn, jacks and queens on the turn. So I think it's fine. What you'll probably also find is if they have a hand as strong as king, queen, or ace, king, they will bet. If they have a hand as strong as 2 pair, they're just going to triple barrel. So I think the value bet is fine. And of course, we end up chopping the pot, which is not the worst thing that's happened this session, let me tell you. Queen 9 off will be an open if it gets to us here in the cutoff, I think. Especially we suspect that Chilean flush is maybe weaker than our other opponents, but that's just based on what we've seen so far. We get 3-bet from the button. This is going to be one of the hands we just give up. On the right-hand table, we will make a raise with a Queen 8 of hearts, blind v blind. So as we draw a somewhat disappointing start to our series here on Betsafe to a close, I hope you guys have taken something away from this video. There's certainly been some interesting situations. There's certainly been some disappointing outcomes. But this is a 4-part series. This is the first 30 minutes. I look forward to bringing you the second, third, and fourth parts. Hopefully we can start winning some pots. But I think the way we played seems reasonable to me. All our choices seem solid and logical. So that concludes part 1. I will be back for part 2, 3, and 4 soon. So hope to see you there. Thank you.